Good afternoon, everyone. I will now call the University Senate to order. And I just have to say how delighted I am at the top to see folks here in person. I understand the last in-person Senate meeting was 5 years ago. So we are indeed at a momentous time. We knew the world would return after COVID. And here indeed, 5 years later, we are returning to convene as a university governance body in person. Before we get started, we have an item of housekeeping to take care of. Nancy Sims is the appointed and approved Senate parliamentarian, is not available to be present today. So a substitute parliamentarian has been contracted for today's meeting. Therefore, item 2 concerns a motion to suspend the rules and appoint Miriam Simmons, PRP, as the parliamentarian for both the university and faculty Senate meetings today on March 6, 2025. This motion requires to carry a 2/3 to majority to carry. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, and also because we are in person, we are piloting a new voting system. I say it Chimelin at this meeting, Chimelin at this meeting. Please scan the QR code or visit the website down on the screen and enter the numeric code in to cast your vote. If you leave the app or website open throughout the meeting, each of the subsequent polls will show up. It's not necessary to rescan or enter the code for each vote. Please do not vote if you are not a voting member of the Senate. John, please initiate the poll. Oh, I see it. Is that moving? Yeah. They're here. Was the poll initiated? Okay. Turn that off.
Few more seconds to vote.
Going on, I guess I'll just say, we can expect as we rejoin all together for the first time in 5 years that we'll probably have a little bumpiness with logistics. So we'll just all be patient with that. Oh, no.
It looks like not everybody was able to vote the first time, so we've reopened it.
If we voted previously, do we need to re-vote in this new opened poll?
The question was if they voted previously, should everyone just re-vote again the new time? The answer is yes. So new poll, going to be open. Please cast your vote again. If all else fails, we'll go to the old-fashioned hand raising version, but we're going to try to use the technology.
The motion carries 98% in favor of suspending the temporary and approving the temporary parliamentarian as opposed to 1.4%.
Great, thank you. Item 3 concerns administrative responses to the University Senate actions and is presented for information. Item 4 is a list of recent faculty, staff, and student deaths that have been sent for announcement to the Senate. I invite you to observe a moment of silence while I read the names. Nancy Benson, Ishta Mutraza. Thank you. Item 5 is approval of the minutes from the University Senate meeting on February 6th and the special University Senate meeting on February 27th. John, please initiate the poll.
Initiated. Few more seconds to vote. The motion carries with 120 people voting in favor. And, oh, I can't see the other side. Yep. Yep. It looks like it passed unanimously.
Thank you. Item 6 is my president's report. I have a number of system-wide updates that I would like to share with you today. The first is navigating our complex federal landscape. Let me start with the uncertainty surrounding recent federal communications and executive orders. I've heard many students, faculty, and staff express fear and anxiety about how the federal changes or proposed changes or directives might affect their education, their scholarship, and their livelihood. First, let me reassure you that our values and our mission remain unchanged. Our university has thrived for more than 170 years, and we will not waver in our commitment to training the next generation of leaders, generating the knowledge and innovations our society so desperately needs. We'll continue to serve the state, nation, and the world while we support each other. We do not, and I do not, have all the answers about the short or long-term impacts about our new federal landscape, which continues to evolve daily. I am, however, I and university leaders are, I have tasked a rapid response group to begin to assess and develop plans, contingency plans for how our 5 campuses should respond. You know, one way to think about that is there are many things coming out of the ether every day directed at university for the new climate. We are working as a university to take them in a systematic way, to do the assessments and impact assessments that we need to be able to then pass that information back out to university leaders, faculty, and students so that we know. You know, our plans and our contingency plans do include if the federal government should follow through on its proposed cuts and mandates. This includes careful evaluation of our multi-year financial commitments. At the same time, I feel that it's important that we do not overreact to what remains a very fluid situation. All of us have work to do to fulfill our shared mission, and university leaders are working to minimize that disruption, your deans, your administrators, to minimize the disruptions and distractions that might stand in our way. We'll continue to engage members of our university community in that scenario planning, knowing that we're much more effective working together. I and the university also continues to partner with our higher ed associations, such as the AAU, to address the legality of federal directives that impact our public service mission. This includes some of the recent stop work orders on many federal grants. We're assessing the ways in which the university can support faculty and staff who are directly impacted by those stop work orders as we assess whether or not they will stand and be legal. I'd also encourage you to visit our rapid response webpage, where you can find on our brief website. This includes the latest updates and is updated very regularly on a wide range of issues, from creating a welcoming and inclusive environment to research funding and immigration. As we move forward together, I want you to know I continue to advocate both locally and nationally on behalf of the institution and on our mission and on the work that is really important that you're doing every day. I'd now like to shift to system-wide strategic planning. And I think it's important to know that we need to continue to dream big and to be clear that even during times of such federal uncertainty that we must continue to develop strategy going forward for the future of the university. If we think back to the budget uncertainty surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, like then, uncertainty surrounded our current budget. And as it did then, it does eventually resolve. The uncertainty becomes less. the world perhaps is never the same again, but the uncertainty will resolve, and we have to manage through that uncertainty and through that ambiguity right now. And all of you need to continue to teach and research and learn through this time of uncertainty and ambiguity. But at the same time, we need to continue to provide strategy and do the strategic planning that's needed for what we want to be in 2030 and 2035. Along those lines, my office hosted a town hall earlier in St. Paul today, which attracted students, faculty, and staff across a wide range of disciplines on the strategic planning focus. We will host another town hall on March 18th here on the West Bank. Schools, colleges, and campuses are also hosting their own town halls, focus groups, and listening sessions. We've distributed a survey last month to students, faculty, and staff. We have over 8,000 responses to that, which I'm really happy to see. But, across these assorted avenues, we're getting a robust community engagement. And that broad engagement strategy is certainly intentional. We need our students, faculty, staff, and alumni to help us design the bold vision of who we want to be in 20 and 2035, one that truly represents what we aspire to be. And I appreciate your participation and your work, as this will help ensure our system-wide strategic plan is not only comprehensive, but reflects the many voices that make up our university community. Together, I do believe we can create a roadmap that honors our past while boldly determining our future, even in these times of uncertainty. I'd now like to turn to health. Several weeks ago, University and Essentia Health announced a bold new path forward for the future of healthcare in our state. A new non-for-profit healthcare system entity is proposed that combines our people, systems, and capabilities to deliver a new level of seamless, expanded healthcare across Minnesota. Our focus here is on transformational change and improving the health of all Minnesotans, not just a structure or contract between our school and other entities that is focused on buildings or faceless transactions. Our goal is to really infuse what's the very best of the university and Essentia have done for decades, while building on the great work at Fairview. We're talking about a newly proposed vision that would fundamentally enhance healthcare delivery. The proposed vision with Essentia is distinct from our current joint venture with Fairview Health Services. That is transactional. The university and Essentia are coming together to operate as one unified healthcare entity system, not an alliance of separate facilities or a mere holding company that is difficult for patients to navigate. There is heightened urgency because the university's existing agreements with Fairview expire next year, which means it has to be planned now. The timeline has created the need for an urgent, innovative new path forward for the betterment of physicians, caregivers, patients across Minnesota, for our medical school, and for all of our health sciences schools that interact. Without a solution, the continued success and reputation of our medical school is in jeopardy. The latest update I can provide you here today is that last Friday, the university made an important step forward to support our university physicians and our statewide clinical mission. We offered to acquire Fairview's 50% interest in the Clinics and Surgery Center joint venture. This proposed investment in the CSC is more than a financial decision. It's our commitment to our mission. As the front door for our practice, the CSC serves hundreds of patients every day where our university physicians work. The facility was designed to support an unparalleled level of patient experience with a focus on promoting collaborative and coordinated care and enabling cutting-edge clinical research. Our commitment to health and medical education must remain strong. Nearly 70% of the state's physicians and other healthcare professionals train here at the University of Minnesota, and keeping that healthcare talent pipeline strong and growing will benefit all of Minnesota. On to our next topic. Later on in the afternoon, the Faculty Senate meeting will address the core curriculum for the Twin Cities. Conversations continue around the proposed core curriculum. I look forward to those conversations. I encourage you to stay for the continuing conversation before the vote next month. Here at the University of Minnesota, it is a key responsibility of shared governance to address the core curriculum. I've been very impressed by the comprehensive nature of the core curriculum creation and socialization, and I'll continue to encourage the Senate to take the responsibility for the curriculum advancement seriously, as I know you have. Some leadership updates. I'm pleased to announce that Ryan Schmissing was recently selected as our inaugural Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. Pending the Board of Regents approval, which meets May 14th, Ryan will join the university on March 31st. As the Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, Ryan will play a primary role in advancing multiple cross-cutting initiatives at the university. This includes supporting our Maroon, Gold, and Bold system-wide strategic plan in partnership with the steering committee and the broader university community. He'll also collaborate and coordinate with senior leaders and stakeholders in shared governance to identify key and plan key system-wide priorities. Ryan spent the past 3 decades serving in leadership roles at the Ohio State University, most recently as its Senior Vice Provost of External Engagement. I'm confident Ryan will excel in this new leadership role and look forward to you welcoming him in the spring. I want to give you an update on the search for our Executive Vice President and Provost. We've also launched a national search for our next Executive Vice President and Provost back in January. Provost Croson will step down at the end of the academic year with many thanks for all of her work. And so it is my goal to identify a new provost by this summer. Dean Sarah DeWalt and Executive Vice President Greg Goldman are co-chairing the search committee. This includes broad representation across our campuses, schools, colleges, and units. We've partnered with Isaacson Miller to assist us in recruiting a broad and diverse national candidate pool. This position, as you all well know, is critical to our public mission and to our strategic vision. And so as part of my commitment to ensuring our search process is transparent and participatory, we've been gathering feedback from the university community through a series of listening sessions. The input received in those sessions helped to shape the position profile that is being used to advertise the position and to assist Isaacson Miller in the recruitment of candidates. On to our state legislative budget request. Over the past several weeks, senior leaders, including myself from across the university, have been very active at the state capitol, which is in session, advocating on behalf of our talented students, faculty, and staff, and highlighting many of the ways in which the university community is positively impacting the state, nation, and world. I myself has testified multiple times in St. Paul in recent weeks on your behalf. State investments are absolutely essential to ensuring the University of Minnesota is able to advance its powerful service mission. Support from the state not only ensures a successful future for our university, it ensures a successful future for our state and our nation in the work that we do. We will continue to advocate on your behalf in St. Paul to ensure the great work of our university is reflected loudly and proudly. So in conclusion, I want to thank you for your support, your leadership, and your collaboration as we move forward. In closing, I want to acknowledge the sheer number of meeting requests that I received from faculty, staff, and students across our 5 campuses, especially in recent weeks with the many federal orders coming down. First, I want to also just say I very much appreciate hearing directly from members of our university community. My president email address is evaluated every day, and we do look at all the emails that are sent in. And I think I also want people to understand that, of course, due to the perpetual demands with this role, I'm not able to necessarily meet all of the meeting requests that happen individually, and do sometimes refer people both back to your units, as well as we provide responses often from my office. But know that those decisions are not made lightly, and I certainly would love to take all of the meeting requests. However, I would do nothing then but meet and wouldn't be able to do all the other things we need to do. So I want you to know that a declined meeting request no way diminishes the importance of your concerns or contributions. And partly, I also expect to hear from the community through aspects like this of the shared governance, up through your deans, who we're also meeting with regularly, and through other of your unit leaders. So I work in addition to notifying my office directly, I encourage people to work through their local units and their leadership. So thank you for understanding. This concludes my president's report. Item 7 is questions to the president. I received some questions that were submitted in advance, so I'll start first with those. The first is around the administration's policies on immigration, which affect undocumented and visa-sponsored students, staff, and faculty. And there is an interest in this question in having clear instructions and protocols for how faculty and staff should respond. And so I want to let people know we continue to update our safecampusumn.edu, which should be your first source of information on this item. And the instructions then should be first, if you have an immigration question or a question related to ICE that comes up in the moment, the first thing you should do is contact OGC, our general counsel, if you're presented with a warrant or other document. And in that safe.umn.edu, it provides that contact information. Second, you should contact UMPD if they were concerned about safety. And obviously that also information is in the SafeU. And then third, we do ask that you don't interfere with law enforcement officers. The next question I have is a question around, could you or someone from OGC please share with us the university's interpretation of the administrative policy, public access to university information with respect to the following question? Are work-related emails sent by faculty using their own personal Gmail accounts instead of their umn.edu email accounts to the personal Gmail accounts of the regents considered to be discoverable under the provisions of the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, MGDPA? One, there is guidance on this issue, and here I have a link. I don't know how that link is shared. Okay. Okay, so that's the official policy link. Thank you. The question here is whether the email is work related. And the answer to this is if the email is work related, it doesn't matter what account you send it from or what mechanism or what phone. If the information is related to work, all of it is discoverable DPA. So if a UMN employee is conducting university business with their private email account or your Gmail account, those work-related emails are considered public and accessible, and therefore subject to MGDPA, even though they are in a private email account. I'll note that this is not my rule. This is the state policy. With that, I will open this up to questions from the floor, and the mechanism to do that is, can we start with the people in the room and then go to people online? Okay. Hello.
Hi, President Cunningham. So you didn't say anything about the administrative policy that we had the special meeting about, so I have a question about this. So as we know, in 2024, the University Senate passed an administrative policy on institutional speech, and the vote was 122-8. And I had mentioned in the last meeting, this was an amazing story of shared governance at its best in terms of dealing with a challenging issue and trying to deal with the complexities and uphold free speech and academic freedom, as well as our mission to the state. The community then read the Board of Regents' proposed resolution that was circulated last month. Many members of the community and many expressed deep concern, as I'm sure you're aware. I know you were CC'd on a lot of these communications with respect to, one, its constitutionality regarding both individual and collective speech in terms of both broad and vague language that would be rendered unconstitutionally vague and broad. Two, the undermining of academic freedom. And three, its disrespect for the work of shared governance, because we were directed by the Provost Task Force to actually undertake this effort of creating administrative policy. So in response, the Faculty Senate endorsed a resolution from the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee last week by an overwhelming margin, again, 110-14, that asked for this resolution to be rescinded, the board resolution to be rescinded, and to support shared governance, free speech, and academic freedom by standing behind the administrative
30 seconds.
policy. So President Cunningham, you as chair of this body, as president of the university, have you asked the board to retract their resolution? Have you spoken to the regents about the resolution? Were you involved in crafting it?
Thank you very much, Michael. So two things. One, I want to reiterate my commitment to academic freedom and all of our individual, and as a researcher and as a professor and as a faculty for 30 years, our individual right to research, to teach, to scholarship, and to speak with our individual voice is paramount. And I just want you to know that I fully support academic freedom in that regard. I also fully support shared governance process. I also fully support the process of my board. And I appreciate that those two are in conflict right now. And you are appropriate in working directly with the board on their process, and I am not involved.
So you haven't been involved in crafting it or consulting with them?
I am not involved. This is the board's process, and how the board manages it is up to the board.
My hope is
thank you.
that we don't end up down a path of legal conflict because it's not just individual speech we're obligated to uphold, it's also collective.
Speaker's time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, President. Is this on? Thank you, President Cunningham. Hi, I'm Stacy Maher. I'm a Civil Service Senator, University Senator from CFANS. I am here today to ask you, so Wednesday, just yesterday, the metro area was walloped with a sizable storm that suspended Metro Transit and University Transit in the morning. The university did not move to temporarily reduce operations or suspend classes while these transportation barriers were in place for students, staff, and employees. I want to acknowledge and appreciate from a staff's lens the Work with Flexibility program, but that isn't always in place for all, regardless of when these emergent situations kind of come up. And it doesn't apply to our student body either. So could you please share your administration's decision tree model for reduced operations in light of the events that happened less than 24 hours causing plows to go into the ditch?
Thank you. And I have some details, but not all the details. So the university, the Twin Cities campus specifically, so each campus has its own process for assessing closure of the campus or not, or reduced work operations, given obviously that they are in different climates and have different activity going on them. On the Twin Cities campus here, that happens through our facilities and operations lead, and they met as they are tasked to do, and they have a set of criteria which they went through, and that was the decision they arrived at. I do not have the details of that criteria. That could perhaps be provided at a later point. I understand the decision wasn't pleasing, and I'm sure caused inconvenience, and for that, please accept my apologies. But there is a process, and they did follow it. So whether that is the correct, whether that process needs to be tweaked or something, I'd be happy to discuss with my Vice President of Finance and Operations, who oversees that section. I also encourage during these times, obviously, folks to work with their supervisor directly about, and their students work with their instructors directly about when there is a shift due to events like this. But thank you. Yeah. So there were online questions. How do I
Three
see-
online questions.
Okay.
First, we have VV Ganeshanathan.
Hi, I'm Vivi Ganeshanathan, a faculty senator from CLA, and I have a two-part question and would really appreciate an answer to both of the parts which are related. The University of Minnesota has recently appeared on a list of universities being investigated for anti-Semitism. We're also on a list of universities named in a DOJ task force on anti-Semitism. I'd like to know the first part of the question, what is the status of that investigation and task force? What has the university done in response? I'd like to know where we are in the investigation process and what, if any, information the university, the administration has submitted to the DOE and the DOJ. And the second part of my question, I'd like to know what the university's position on the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IHRA, definition of anti-Semitism is, especially in light of the task force. Thank you.
So the first part of the question is around, there are two open investigations on the university, one from the DOE and one from the DOJ, over concerns of anti-Semitism, specifically on the Twin Cities campus. Those are open. We're in the process of evaluating what the next steps are for that. And to the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been information submitted back. Those are fairly recent. One happened last week and one is just a week or so before that. I want to say, though, at the top, obviously the university stands firmly behind anti-Semitism as well as behind anti-Islamophobia, anti-racism. We support all of our students, all of our faculty, and all of our staff to live their fullest self in a safe and welcoming environment. Including faculty and gender identity and LGBTQ plus community and on and on. So all of our students and staff and faculty, it is the utmost importance that we provide a welcoming climate to. I continue to meet regularly with an assortment of groups, including our Jewish students groups and our Jewish faculty groups and our Muslim and our Muslim group, as well as faculty concerned about Gaza and Palestine. And I meet with those regularly over the past year. And my staff and student life and our provost continues to meet with many other groups as well to understand what those concerns are and how we can move ahead. I think we've moved ahead in a number of ways in terms of making sure that we have a supportive climate, and we're going to continue to do that work, as well as to relay to the public a lot of that good work that has been done to make sure that we are indeed a self and welcoming climate for everyone. I don't have an opinion on the second question that you asked. Thank you, Vive. Next question.
We are out of time for this item of business.
Okay, thank you. So with that, item 8 is the provost report. So Provost Croson, I invite you to give your report and then move right into questions from the provost. I will delegate calling on people to you during the questions, so the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here in person. And for those of you online, thank you for joining us as well. As President Cunningham mentioned, a number of us are spending quite a lot of time managing the various directives out of Washington, D.C. Not only are we involved in small groups thinking of trying to process what comes out, understand its implications, think about potential scenario planning. We're also convening a group of university leaders, including deans and chancellors and other leaders 3 times a week, so that we can both discuss with them what we are hearing and seeing and what they should be thinking about, and more importantly, hearing from them what they are hearing from their constituents, so that we can ensure that we're communicating and responding to the concerns that people have. This is a time of great uncertainty, especially budget uncertainty, and we are in the middle of our budget planning for next academic year. And so we've been talking quite a lot about scenario planning around potential budgetary impacts of these federal and other directives, especially, not only, but especially for colleges where grants and federal grants and contracts make a big portion of their budget. Just trying to think about what are the likely consequences and how would we navigate them. But as President Cunningham mentioned, the work of the university goes on. So she mentioned the core curriculum, which continues in its process that will be discussed, I think, at Faculty Senate next. We have formed 3 work groups around artificial intelligence, one around the use of artificial intelligence in research, one around the use of artificial intelligence in teaching and learning, and one around the use of artificial intelligence in operations. Those groups made their preliminary report to the President's Cabinet this week, and they're continuing their work. We're looking for some final recommendations by the end of the academic year. And then, of course, we continue to prepare for our Higher Learning Commission 10-year reaccreditation. That's something for the Twin Cities campus. It's a major initiative. The site visit is scheduled for late September of 2025, and our report is due in, I think, September 1, but early September as well. And so thank you for all of your efforts in contributing to that process. And then finally, a few leadership updates from my arena. Some of you may have heard that Dr. Harvey Charles, the Vice Provost for International Affairs, is no longer in the role. In the interim, Global Programs and Strategy Alliance is reporting to Vice President for Research and Innovation, Shashank Priya, with support from Vice Provost Raj Singh, Vice President of Research and Innovation, Shashank Priya, with support from Vice Provost Raj Singh for student-facing activities. And then we have one dean search going this year, the College of Pharmacy. We have finalists coming this week, and I'm optimistic that we will be able to name a dean to start at the beginning of the new semester or the end of the spring. So that concludes my report. I did get one question in advance that I will read and respond to, and then I'm happy to take questions from the floor. So the question that came in advance, my understanding is that some faculty wish to delay a vote on the core curriculum ostensibly because their college/departments have not had adequate time to fully consider any budgetary impacts. that changes to the Twin Cities liberal education requirements might have on their units. Have any of the Twin Cities deans conveyed similar concerns to you with regard to needing more time to perform budget analyses, and which one? I have not heard budgetary concerns from any of the Twin Cities deans. We've had multiple meetings in Twin Cities Deans Council discussing the core curriculum, and Vice Provost Raj Singh has also met twice just with the deans of undergraduate serving colleges. Some of the deans were concerned about the 1-credit first-year course, which has now been dropped. Others were not supportive of having graduate students teach in the synthesis course, and so we added restrictions on who could teach that addressed those concerns. In particular, my discussions with the deans have highlighted how every college and every department has the potential to participate in delivering this new core curriculum, sometimes in new and interesting ways. The opportunities for broader participation in this curriculum are greater than under our existing core, not lower. As we've discussed, I've set aside some funds that can be used for course development and potentially bridging if there are significant dislocations, but I'm not expecting those. More generally, we need to be making curricular decisions that are in the best interest of our students and the future of our university, not based on financial self-interest of a particular department or college. I know that my deans take this institutional view, and I hope that as senators, you would as well. I will add a personal note. As many of you know I walked into this position in March 2020, just after a failed vote of a new core curriculum. And having to restart that process is not something I would wish on my successor. It would be great if they could walk in to an implementation rather than having to start the analysis again. So that was the question in advance and my response, and I'm happy to take questions from the floor or the Zoom.
Provost Croson, we do have a question online from Eric Schwartz. And we probably only have time for the one question.
Hi, Provost Croson. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. And because of its importance, I want to follow up on a question that was asked earlier. The regents are considering a resolution about, which says in part that institutional statements of public concern will not be made by individual university units. And so my question is really very straightforward. If our center that deals with vaccines issued a report next week saying that vitamin A is an inadequate solution to the measles outbreak, and issued a public statement saying vaccines are really critical, that would seem by its terms to violate the regent's resolution. And that is what is of great concern. And so my question, two parts. First, is that a reasonable interpretation of that statement, which seems to indicate that such a public expression would be prohibited? And if it is it an appropriate subject for you or for the president to discuss privately with members of the Board of Regents?
Dr. Schwartz, that's a great question. I'm not sure I have a great answer for you. I heard the president say, no, that is not covered under the Board of Regents policy. That in particular, I know that the members of the Board of Regents are committed to academic freedom and to our ability to communicate our science. But I can't, not seeing the final version of the resolution or understanding exactly the process that, that they're using to develop it, I'm not sure I would give you a definitive answer on that. I would refer you to the Board of Regents. I'm sorry, is that a question? You want to come and ask your question?
I didn't know there was time, but I mean, isn't this the job of both the provost and the president to represent the concerns we have about the infringements on academic freedom and collective speech?
So I know that we have been in discussions with the board and we have represented those concerns. They've heard them directly from you. They've heard them from your FCC leadership. I think there have been many discussions, and I think, again, direct communication is the most effective way to do that.
So there have been conversations with the board about the proposed resolution.
They've seen all of the materials that you've developed.
So first of all, we're out of time. And second of all, the things that we've been CC'd on that you folks have all sent to the board, we're aware of those. The board is also aware of those. So, and I guess, and Provost Christian, I think you're out of time, so you're welcome to sit down. And I'll just use the chair prerogative to say the dissemination of individual science. I have not seen the final language, but there's no intent to stop the dissemination of individual science. That's part of academic freedom, of the dissemination of individual scholarship and science. We are out of time.
Madam Chair, I request permission to be recognized to
We're
make a
out of
motion.
time on this topic, and
But I'm requesting permission to make a motion to extend time.
So I believe the request comes from not a member of the Senate. Is the ruling?
I am a member of the Senate. This is Vivi Ganeshanathan, CLA faculty
I can't
senator.
you. So do we need a vote?
I'd like to move to extend time by 5 minutes
Is there any?
for this,
thank
for
you.
this
Is there
item.
objection to the extension of time? So I'll give a 5-minute extension of time, and we'll have more questions. So the questions are for the provost. So they just told me no. Oh, no. Okay, is it? If there are any objections, we can do a vote. Can you raise your hand if you object? So there's at least one objection, so why don't we have a vote? So then it needs to be a 2/3 vote to extend the time.
The poll is open. Sorry, it accidentally closed. I apologize. Can folks re-vote if you haven't already voted?
It's a little clunky, but it's really nice to see everyone in person. So, yeah.
It's still not showing up for some people on their phones.
I will close the poll and I will reopen it one more time. The poll has been reopened. Everyone will need to vote again, even if you have already previously voted. Few more seconds to vote. There are 96 votes in favor and 32 votes against. The motion carries.
So I see I have 5 more minutes for questions.
I'll yield my time to Seema Shaksari on Zoom.
Thank you so much. I'm Seema Shaksari, Associate Professor in the Department of Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies, and a member of Educators for Justice in Palestine. This question is for Provost Crowson and also the President. There was a question asked about information provided in response to the executive order for the DOJ and DOE investigations on the university. And from my understanding, the university has not provided information to the Department of Justice or Department of Education. My question is, does the university intend to provide information, and what information will the university provide once the process starts? And 2, the question about IRA. What is the university policy, not President Cunningham's personal opinion, but the university policy on adopting IRA, because that will have a very direct effect on faculty, students, and staff who will be accused of anti-Semitism for opposing the genocide in Gaza. And lastly, the Board of Regents has on its agenda discussing the resolution that Michael talked about. My question is, why is this item being discussed during the break when many
30 seconds.
The question is, why is that decision being made during the break? Thank you.
Maybe I'll start with the last one, which is I don't know why the Board of Regents schedules its votes the way it does or its timing. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the board, and I can't speak to how they decide on that agenda. On the definition, the university is not, as far as I know, adopted any particular definitions in that space. So whether we support it or not, it's not a member of policy, at least today. On the DOJ and DOE investigations, my understanding is that when the Department of Justice and the Department of Education open investigations and ask us for information, we comply to the extent that we are obligated to do that under the law and under our regulatory, responsibilities. But my understanding, again, as President Cunningham said, is we haven't sent them any information yet.
Okay, Provost Grossman, so I'll follow up one. Oh, go ahead.
Ophelia Ferran is up next.
Thank you. I'm a faculty member from CLA, Department of Spanish and Portuguese Studies, and I wanted to say that I feel that there is something that is not getting resolved in the going back and forth between the University Senate document about the resolution that the Board of Regents has taken on the units being able to put statements on their web pages or in whichever way. I feel that in many of the communications from the Board of Regents and even from the president and the provost today, there is a limitation of the discussion of freedom of speech and even academic freedom to an individual level. I've heard it mentioned by the president talking about individual research being able to be communicated as a response to Eric Schwartz's question. But the issue is also that there is a collective academic freedom from units that collectively have expertise on a topic and need to share that topic for the greater good of the state and its citizens. And I feel that that is not being addressed. And that was exactly what the original task force had worked on. Could you please talk about how we could come to a understanding about that? Because I think that's being elided in the discussion right now.
So I appreciate your concern and your viewpoint, and my recommendation of how to come to an understanding about that is to communicate with the board directly.
Really quick, would there be a commitment from the academic administration to working with this faculty senate after whatever happens to figure out how we're going to ensure that their individual faculty who work with centers can maximize academic freedom? Because that's a huge concern.
I fully understand. I'm always happy to work with this academic senate. Thank you.
Item 10 is the SCC report. Professor Goodnow, as I did with Provost Croson, I invite you to go right to the questions after your report, delegating calling on people to you. Thank you, President Cunningham. I would like to begin by recognizing the work of the Senate office in putting together our first in-person Senate meeting in 5 years. While we know how things were done in the past, Many of the people and the technology are different, and so I hope that we can all continue to be patient as we learn what works and what doesn't work moving forward. I would also like to acknowledge that being in person is not the preference of everyone. And I appreciate those who are able to be here both in person and online, and any of you that had to work through inconveniences to be here today. I'm especially appreciative of that. I personally do believe there are benefits to being in person, and I hope that we will all experience some of those today. The SCC has met twice since our last University Senate meeting. The first meeting was on February 10th, and I called that with the FCC to discuss the much discussed already Board of Regents resolution, and I covered a bit of that at the special University Senate meeting on February 27th. I want to highlight that the letter to the board that was shared with you earlier from the SCC and FCC, that's provided for information in the docket today as item 14. The resolution that was approved by the University Senate on February 27th was sent to all members of the Board of Regents on Monday, March 3rd. I had one regent reply thanking me for the information and indicating that he had watched the video of the special meeting. The agenda for the March 14th Board of Regents meeting has been posted, and it lists item 5 as a resolution related to the response to the President's Task Force on Institutional Speech. The docket with the details will likely be posted tomorrow. It's typically posted around noon, and I'm not sure if that's a guaranteed time or not, but that has been typically when I see it. Unlike last time, since I have a chance to talk to you all right now, I don't plan to send an email announcing that docket, but I strongly encourage you to take a look and watch for that tomorrow. So we also had our regular meeting on February 24th, where we were joined by Vice President for the Office of Human Resources, Ken Horstman, who provided an update on 4 workforce reinvestment working groups. President Rebecca Cunningham has continued the work on the workforce reinvestment resolution by establishing an overarching committee that includes the provost, the executive vice president for finance and operations, and Vice President Horstman. Their goal of the overarching committee is to reassess and prioritize the remaining recommendations, and their report is expected in May. The work of that group, there are 4 working groups: compensation, benefits, civil service and P&A administrative staff success, and faculty and P&A instructor success. And I know many of you are serving on those committees, and I thank you for that service. As a reminder, investment in our employees is part of the used biennium budget request to the state, and President Cunningham, as she mentioned earlier, has been advocating explicitly for that investment in St. Paul, and we are appreciative for that. At that same meeting, we reviewed the openness and research policy, and that's for vote on item 6 in the Faculty Senate agenda. The final thing discussed at the SCC meeting on the 24th was the suggestion of the Student Senate Consultative Committee Chair earlier this year, and that was around supporting the Higher Education Asset Preservation and Replacement, HEAPR, at least that one has an acronym, request to the state for funding for permanent barriers to be added to the Washington Avenue Bridge to prevent suicide attempts. Since the SCC meeting, we have finalized and voted to approve our statement. That can be found on the legislative tracker on the Senate website, and it wasn't ready in time for this docket, but it will be on the docket of the next Senate meeting. Finally, as I often end with, I would like to specifically invite and welcome university senators to stay for the Faculty Senate if they have comments or questions on the core curriculum or the openness and research policy I mentioned earlier. As we note, we do adhere to the formality that non-senators must be yielded time by a senator in order to speak. However, I've yet to see anyone not be yielded time, so that should not, I hope, is not a deterrent for anyone. Non-senators wishing to speak may have a senator come up to the mic with them and have the senator yield time, or just come to the mic and ask for time to be yielded. This concludes my SCC report. Thank you, President Cunningham. And my understanding, as we've figured out, you can come to the queue at the mic in front and they'll watch for the folks online. I did have one question submitted in advance, so I will address that one first. The question is from someone who wishes to no longer receive the unsolicited post-mortem emails routinely sent to faculty senators after a Senate meeting, and asks that the FCC direct the Senate office to moderate that listserv so that it's not used anymore, or can senators request their emails be removed from the listserv or the Senate webpage? So first of all, have no official capacity with that. They are not being sent to all senators. They are not being sent from the Senate office. They're not being sent with a Senate office listserv. So you can't be removed from the listserv in the Senate office, or else you won't get the docket and those kinds of things. And I suppose you can ask to be removed from the Senate website, although I would maybe encourage you not to do that, as that could create a barrier to those you represent to want to express concerns to you. And so maybe that's a long way of saying that perhaps setting up a filter on your Gmail might be your best option. So. And with that, we'll turn to the questions, and I don't know which side was first. So it looks like Amber's telling me that side. So,
Yep, we have a question, it looks like from Rochester.
okay.
Thank you. I am Kelsey Metzger, a faculty senator representing the Rochester campus. In the December Senate meeting, concerns were raised regarding the abrupt change to a primarily in-person modality for Senate meetings. As a senator who is not on the Twin Cities campus and as a university stakeholder who is firmly committed to equity and access and inclusion for participants across the entire system and with varying access needs, I echo those concerns wholeheartedly. The information available to senators indicates that the Equity, Access, and Diversity Committee and the Disabilities Issues Committees were not consulted before the SCC took a vote on this matter in January, although strong opposition to proceeding with a vote without this consultation was raised in the members of the SCC in the limited discussion that was held. Such consultation with these entities seems to me a crucially important information gathering step that would have enabled informed and thoughtful consideration of the potential impacts that altering meeting modality would have on equitable access and participation. Given the importance of access and inclusion for robust shared governance, why was consultation with these committees not pursued? And what is the plan for addressing the access concerns that remain with instantiating a primarily in-person modality?
Thank you for the question. I'm trying to remember now back. I do not recall an explicit request that those committees be consulted before the SCC discussed it. The SCC did discuss equity and inclusion type issues as they considered the modality. We opted for compromise, as I said in my earlier report. And so primarily in person, I mean, I would say they're 50%. They may feel like primarily, but we felt that that was a compromise. There were strong opinions expressed as well around the benefits of being in person. We also have respect as part of the shared governance to the request from the president that we consider them in person. And so I guess that's about the best I can answer you with. So.
Just to follow up on that, my experience today as a person who is not in person, it definitely feels like there is a preference for in person and that those of us participating remotely are not considered as equal participants.
Yep.
I cannot, you may feel the way you feel. I can respect that. And yes.
We have one more question.
Okay, we have time for one more question. So. Okay, so I think the side.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair Gidna. Nate Mills, English, CLA. At that Senate meeting on the 27th, you shared that you and some other members of the FCC met with three regions who were sponsoring the region's resolution on institutional speech. Since as far as I'm aware, the Senate hasn't received any records or sort of minutes from that meeting about the discussion, the substance of the discussion. So I wanted to ask, how did you advocate against the resolution and for the will of the shared governance body as it was overwhelmingly expressed in both the approval of the task force administrative policy on statements of public concern, as well as in the February 27th resolution calling for the board to rescind that resolution?
Okay, so I will try and keep track of all those pieces, and I might answer them out of order. So first of all, the meeting happened before the resolution on the 27th, so that was not specifically addressed. There are not minutes routinely taken at non-meetings, regular meetings of the FCC. It was the FCC leadership and the Board of Regents leadership, as well as Phil Bowman and Mark B. From the task force as well. So I would say that primarily we reiterated what was in the FCC and SCC letter, concerns around academic freedom, concerns about how shared governance was and the task force proposed policy, that it was not clear to us how the board viewed their guiding principles relative to that. We said it wasn't clear. So one of the things from the February 10th FCC SCC special meeting was a strong request for clarity. I would say that is the strongest thing that Perry and I advocated for, was to have the board provide clarity. I would say I didn't learn a lot from the board at that moment. It was very much they wanted to listen to us. We also reiterated language and concerns that we had been CC'd on in emails about concerns about academic freedom and centers and things like that. I would say that Mark and Phil spent a good amount of time explaining the report and proposed policy. And I mean, we reiterated the overwhelming approval that happened in December at University Senate and those pieces. And so I think I touched on many of your questions.
Yeah, thank you. I think just to echo some of the things that other people have said, I think we're looking for a very strong advocacy for the Senate's position on this to the board. Thanks.
Okay, item 12 is an update from our faculty legislative liaisons. Professor Blair is here to provide this report. If there is time and you would like to answer a question or two, please do so following the same procedure that Provost Croson and Professor Goodnow followed. Thank you.
Why, thank you. Because of time constraints, I'm going to go down to 3 minutes if I can. I'm Rob Blair. I am a faculty legislative liaison, which actually means, and there are two of us, Mark B. in the College of Biological Sciences, and I'm in the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences. We're appointed by the president, next one, and we serve 3-year terms. Our whole point of existence, at least in this position, is to be a conduit of information between faculty and the state legislature, okay? A conduit. We don't know everything, but we try and match people up to what they need to know. Next one, please. And that's emphasized there in the circle. So the legislature, right now, it's been an interesting year. The Senate is 50-50 Republican and Democrat. The House is currently one up in Republican membership, so they are in control. It's expected to go down even Steven after the election in Roseville next week. Anyways, well, next week. Okay, next one. Typically, we have budget years and we have bonding years. Budget is when we get increases in base funding for institutions. Bonding is when we get money for capital improvements. They are usually during even years. I mean, budgets are usually during odd years. Bonding is usually during even years. But over the past 5 years, things have gotten all a little bit mixed up, and we do a little bit of budgeting and bonding each year. All right, the university's request, the university has a base budget of about $1.49 billion a year from the state, and our budget request is an increase to that base. Hopefully, we won't get a decrease. Rarely, if ever, happens. Next, please. So, what has the university requested? Next, please. Is that they have requested, my printing is up, $235 million in budget increases and $220 million in bonding requests. Skip the next 5. It's just telling you the details of those requests. The process initiates with Governor Walz's budget proposal. And right up there, you can see that Governor Walz suggested that we receive $0 in the increase in our base budget. And we don't know yet the request for the bonding. In bonding, a little bit of clarification there. The next one is that we're hoping to get HEAPR. Jen Goodnow talked about HEAPR, which is higher education asset preservation. And that's basically keeping the windows working or the roof tight on your buildings. And we also major capital request is for a facility down in Mower County called FARM, focused on 21st century technology and agriculture. So where are we right now? That is the question. This morning, we found that the budget estimate is going to be a little bit positive at the end of this year, but in 2 years, it is going to be a $5.1 billion deficit. So that means this year it is unlikely that the university will get an increase in the base budget, but that's my guess. And if I could predict what the legislature is going to do every year, I would be in a much higher position than I am right now. So what can you do? 2 slides more, please. There we go. We have advocates.umn.edu is a listserv for people who are interested in helping out in advocating at the legislature on university issues. We can now select out people who are faculty. You get to identify yourself as faculty, and we will notify you 2, maybe 3 times a year when it's really important to notify your specific representative or senator. So if you're interested, advocates.umn.edu.
Question? Do you have any questions? Yeah. Thank you for that report, as well as for your work with the state legislator. And I encourage everyone to participate in both the advocacy days and advocacy to the legislator on behalf of the university. Your voices as faculty and staff and students on the ground for the tremendous work that you're doing and the stories that you tell do really make an impact with legislators. And I will reiterate, it is the budget forecast, which came out this morning, which was noted, is a downgrade from the budget forecast that was put out a few weeks ago. And with that, we are working hard to advocate for all of you for our the funding for the critical work that we do at the university. Item 13 concerns revisions to the administrative policy, public service, campaigning for or holding public office. Is there any discussion on this? And I think I might do that by maybe a show of hands or online or by poll. How should I indicate that in person here? Okay. But I guess the question is there any discussion on it before the poll? And I want to make sure we do capture online interest in discussion as well as in the room. So in the room, if there's any interest in discussion on this, I would have you raise your hand. If there's any interest online in having a discussion on this item, raise your virtual hand. So seeing none and hearing none, we're ready to initiate the poll. Please note this is for Twin Cities faculty and staff only.
Poll's been initiated. A few more seconds to vote. The motion carries with 89 in favor and 2 against.
Thank you. Item 14 concerns a letter to the Board of Regents from the SEC and FCC leadership and is presented for information. Item 15 concerns recently revised administrative policies and is presented for information. Item 16 concerns old business. There is no old business for the University Senate. I've been asked to note that we are 10 minutes behind time currently. if there is any objection to skipping over new business for the University Senate in consideration for the 10 minutes of time. I guess if there's any objection in the room or online to skipping new business, please indicate that now, either virtually or through a hand raise. No, seeing none, we will move on beyond new business. There being no further business, this meeting stands adjourned and the Faculty Senate will convene 10 minutes ago, so immediately following thereafter. Thank you so much, and thank you for making the time to come and travel here today, and thank you very much for those folks that are participating online as well. I do feel privileged to get to stand in front of you as your president and the governing body, and I think it's important to get to do so at an assortment of different times. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to give folks a minute here to get settled as we learn how to transition in physical space. I'm realizing we might also need, once we have in-person meetings, a little time to actually interact in between, because there's good conversations that happen. Okay. With that, while the last folks are settling, good afternoon. I now call the Faculty Senate to order. Item 2 concerns administrative responses to the Faculty Senate actions and is presented for information. Item 3 is an approval of the minutes from the Faculty Senate meeting on February 6th, 2025. John, please initiate that poll for folks that are just coming in, right? There are folks that are just coming in now. There shouldn't be, but maybe are. We are using the QR code, which should be put up on the screen so that people could see it. Because I did see some people just enter, so I want to make sure everybody has access to that code. And we are using that for polling and voting. Once you open it, if you keep it open, you should be able to just vote with all the subsequent polls. Is it possible to put that up? Working on it. Okay. Talk amongst yourselves for a minute.
Few more seconds to vote.
Code up for people to see it who just came in. It's what? Okay. Okay.
The motion passes unanimously with 72 responses.
Can we make sure that, I'm not too concerned about the minutes, but I do want to follow procedure. Can we please get the QR? I can wait a minute to start, but can we get the QR code put back? Okay. Thank you. I know I very much appreciate the staff as we learn to transition back to in-person meetings. To the staff, yes. Okay. Item 4, I think I'm up to item 4, is the FCC report. And so with that, Professor Goodenough, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, President Cunningham. As I noted in my SCC report just moments ago, the openness in research policy is for vote in item 6 on the Faculty Senate agenda. This was discussed at the FCC last November, but it was just at the SCC at our last meeting. I wanted to speak about that for a second. In my opinion, the title of the policy is a little bit backwards. The Board of Regents policy requires that absent compelling reasons, the university shall not accept restrictions on participation in university research or on the dissemination of the results of university research. This policy is focused on cases where there might be those compelling reasons to accept restrictions. So it's essentially more about the non-open research. The proposed updates were welcomed at FCC and FCC in that by creating a 3-tiered review system, there are efficiencies gained, and it should make it easier for researchers who are interested in pursuing this type of scholarly work to be more competitive for grants which carry restrictions. Moving on to the FCC meeting on February 20th, we reviewed and discussed the final report of the core curriculum that will take up most of the rest of our time on the Faculty Senate agenda today. You may recall that at earlier meetings or in earlier communications, the intent was that there would be a final discussion and vote today. However, at our meeting on the 20th, the FCC's discussed with the chairs of the core curriculum committee whether that continued to make sense. Where we landed is what you have before you today. The final proposal for today's discussion, and we have moved the vote to the April 3rd Faculty Senate meeting so that senators may take back and discuss with their colleagues what they learned today before they have to do their vote. One thing to note is there will not be changes made between now and April 3rd's vote. The report before you is final. We also thought there was value in having the Twin Cities faculty delegation see the actual motion they will vote on, and that is shared in the docket. You will perhaps note that the motion is not voting on the whole report of the Core Curriculum 2025 committee, but it focuses on the framework. Last night, I received a letter of support from the undergraduate student government for the core curriculum proposed. It will be included in the April 3rd docket, and it has been shared with Will and Catherine. The FCC has taken a vote on its modality for meetings next academic year, and it will mirror the previous action of the SCC. That means there will be 3 in-person meetings and 3 regular person meetings on Zoom. Which meeting is which will be decided between the Senate office, consultative committee leadership, and with the approval of the president. Anticipated weather and agenda items will be large factors in making the decision. The FCC met earlier today, also in person, where we considered various bits of committee business and updates. We heard an update on the performance management for academic professional and administrative employees policy, and we had a discussion with Provost Croson. It was a wide-ranging discussion with Provost Croson, touching on a lot of the things that have been covered in the questions with her and answered by her earlier today, as well as hearing about the AI reports a little bit more. You know that the provost has reached out to FCC at various times talking about protests, and she made us aware that they're anticipating some in the coming months. Finally, I want to highlight that a month ago, you may recall I deferred parts of my report and said that I was going to answer those in an email. Well, the next day we had the Board of Regents resolution, and I gave that priority, and I thought perhaps you had gotten enough emails from me after that. So I did want to honor, though, the email or the submitted question that was presented last time, because I think it is a question that we often have. It's about policy, which kind of applies to a lot of the other things we've been talking about. The question is focused on what policies go where And so if you think back just moments ago on item 13 at the University Senate agenda, we had a policy for action along with procedures that we didn't vote on. Item 15 on the University Senate agenda was a list of policies for information, and those two changes were approved by the SCC. Looking ahead to that item 6 on the Faculty Senate agenda, we'll be seeing a vote on that policy in several Senate committees that were consulted. So senators may wonder, what policies are voted on for information at the Senate? Do all policies come to the Senate? Which Senate committee? What policy goes where? I'm sure it's a shock to no one that there are a lot of policies at the university. Keeping track of all of those is a daunting task, but just like the University Senate is going to get us through today's in-person meeting, they get us through this policy consultation. I would encourage you to look on the homepage of the University Senate where there is I lost track of where I'm at. So Policy Review Resources is the name of the link off of there. On that link, the Senate office maintains a record of the process as to how the intersection of policy and shared governance is developed and shared. There is a Senate policy review matrix where every administrative policy is listed and how it's consulted between Senate committees, Senates. There are 5 Senates too, so not every policy goes to every Senate. And the matrix lists whether it's for information or for advisory action. There is a separate matrix for Board of Regents policies. Most Board of Regents policies are consulted with Senate committees or a Senate, but not all. And finally, there's a legislative tracker on that same homepage of the Senate, which has a specific tab for policy consultations. So that's the complicated part just about University Senate stuff. After policies have had their time at Senate committees or one of the 5 Senates, and they also get consulted with other administrative groups and units, the policies under development or review go to PAC, because I'm not sure if we have more policies or acronyms, but there might be a thesis in that somewhere. The PAC is the Policy Advisory Committee, and that's the last stop before the PPC, which is the President's Policy Committee. And that President's Policy Committee is authorized by the President to provide final institutional review and approval of administrative policies. The SCC chair is a non-voting member of the PPC. So that's sort of the Schoolhouse Rocks version of policy stuff for this. And if you're talented more than I, you could make our own little video. I'm sure the Senate office could put that under policy resources.
You don't have to do it
You
today.
could live on forever with your own little video. The specific part of the question that was asked, so that was the general part of the question. The specific part of the question that I had last time was about protest policies. And I'm not sure, we don't have a policy labeled protest policy, but as I said before, all administrative policies have been before Senate committees or a Senate. May not be Faculty Senate, it might have been university, it might have been student, that sort of thing. And even the ones that go to a Senate committee, the chairs are certainly encouraged, if something is concerning to them, to bring it to their consultative committee, and the consultative committee, if concerned, can bring it to the Senate. So there is a process for all of that. With that, I conclude my report. Thank you, President Cunningham.
Thank you, Professor Goodnow. Item 5 is a discussion of the recommendations from the Core Curriculum 2025 Committee. Professors Catherine Pearson and Will Durfee are here to provide a brief update, and then we will have discussion.
We can get the slides.
Working on it. Great, thank you. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, President Cunningham. Thank you, Senate. As co-chair of the Core Curriculum 2025 Committee, along with Will Durfee, I am pleased to present the final version of the Core Curriculum proposal on behalf of the Core Curriculum Committee, comprised of faculty, academic advisors, and undergraduate students from across the university. The committee is very enthusiastic about this proposal and the ways in which it would enhance undergraduate education. Our goal has been to respond to the challenge put forth by the Boyer 2030 Commission on Undergraduate Education. The commission challenges research universities to provide undergraduate students with, quote, a transformative education for life, work, and citizenship. The core curriculum proposal moves from a distributive to an integrative model providing students with courses where they learn broad ways of knowing and modes of inquiry that will help prepare them for life after graduation. It increases student agency, with students choosing the focus area that most interests them and studying that focus area from different disciplinary perspectives. It provides students with the opportunity to reflect upon and communicate what they have learned through a culminating synthesis course experience in what would be a signature undergraduate experience for our University of Minnesota undergraduates. Committee members have held more than 100, yes, more than 100 consultative meetings from fall 2021 to the present. These meetings have included faculty from across the university in large public forums and in very small groups and individually, faculty and student governance committees, academic advisors, university and college student groups and student boards, career experts on campus and those who hire our students. And this proposal is stronger because of the feedback and ideas that we have received, including from many of you in this room. And we want to thank you very much for your deep engagement. We have listened to your feedback, and much has been incorporated into the proposed curriculum, as I will detail in just a minute. I'll review the proposed plan and how it differs from the current model, update you on the most recent changes since February 4th, and also turn to Corinne Zuers, who is the Assistant Budget Director in the Office of the Senior Vice President for Finance and Operations, to provide insight into how this proposal will be considered through the university budgeting process. I know there have been a lot of questions about that, and so we brought in the expert. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So, as this notes, the proposed changes are in front of you. Many of you have seen this many times before, but I think it's important to review it today. So students in the proposed curriculum would take one course of each of these foundation areas that meets the criteria for the foundation. And again, these are broad ways of knowing, modes of inquiry that a lot of universities are moving toward. Students would then take Race, Power, and Justice in the United States, which was passed in 2021 as a current requirement for students. And we heard loud and clear from students and faculty from the beginning that they wanted this to remain. Students would also be required to take Global Perspectives, which is currently an optional theme course. We heard loud and clear from students and faculty, both pedagogical, intellectual, and important reasons in our interconnected world today to make Global Perspectives required. One of the most exciting things about this plan to the committee and students alike is that students would now choose from one of 4 focus areas, and they would take 3 courses within that focus area. The focus areas are listed here: equity, environment, civic life, or well-being. People have asked, what if they want to take, 3 classes in one focus area and then another in another area? That is perfectly fine. The minimum requirement is 3 courses in one focus area. It would be okay if they wanted to take another course in a different focus area, but it's that minimum requirement that they have here, and they would be taking those courses from different multidisciplinary perspectives, which they would then put together at the end in a multidisciplinary synthesis course, which I'll talk more about in a minute. Writing intensive changes are including first-year writing, 2 upper division writing intensive courses, 1 in the discipline and 1 in any discipline, and then a lower or upper writing intensive course in the discipline or out of the discipline. I'm going through these in, out, upper, lower to really emphasize that this plan gives students and colleges more flexibility. We've heard feedback that that was important, and we have listened. I'm going to go to the next slide and then talk about the multidisciplinary synthesis class after that. This is a new slide for those of you who have been following closely that compares the proposal and the current requirements. Hopefully this makes clear what has changed. You can see the current liberal education requirements. Students take 1 of each of 7 core courses, and then, as I mentioned, take 3 of 4 of those theme courses. And then this is how it compares with the new proposal that is before you. I'll let that sink in for a minute so that people can ask questions during Q&A, and move to the next slide. And the slides are in the docket. Thank you, Will. The multidisciplinary synthesis course is the signature experience of this plan. Students are excited about it, faculty are excited about it, and this allows students to bring together with students from across the university, not just their colleges, an experience with around 30 other students and a faculty member an opportunity to reflect both individually and in a group project on what they've learned about their focus area from a variety of different perspectives. Each synthesis course will have the same course objectives, but faculty would be free to teach the course in their own way. This would be a centralized course within the university. It would not fall on individual colleges, and it would be taught by faculty and also P&A instructors, the same categories as I'll get to in a minute in the foundation and focus areas. We envision that there would be about 30 students per class. There would be 4 faculty fellows who would help oversee this course. And these faculty fellows would come from each of the 4 focus areas, and they would be there to support the faculty who are teaching this course. I really want to emphasize, as I will on the next slide as well, that faculty are not required to teach the course in a particular way. They have academic freedom to teach the course as they see fit, just as long as they meet the course objectives. And we've heard from a lot of faculty, a lot of creative ideas and different ways to go with this multidisciplinary course. Students are particularly excited about the group project that would come at the end, where they would work with a handful of peers in their course to put together a project that could be anything from an art project to a research project to a video to a poster. And the idea is there would be a public-facing symposium at the end of this experience. I also want to note another question that we've gotten a lot. How would this interact with people's major capstone course? Students would take this course at the end of their core curriculum courses, so likely perhaps at the end of their sophomore year, sometime during their junior year. So the timing would be distinct from their major capstone course, and also the experience would be distinct because, of course, they would be with students from across the university, not specifically just students within their major. So this is a very nice complement to things, projects and requirements that different colleges and majors have. If I could turn to the next slide. I want to talk briefly about the changes from the second proposal that I talked about on February 4th, 2025. So in response to faculty input, we have revised descriptions for the Creativity and Imagination Foundation in consultation with faculty who would teach those courses. The Search for Meaning is now actually called Humanistic Thinking, as you have seen, and then some slight tweaks to the multidisciplinary course. If we could turn to the next slide, please. So first, these are the revisions. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at these in Creativity and Imagination. This requirement, this foundation course requirement has been broadened not to require original works from students. That, of course, is an option. We have incorporated additional language from the arts section of the current Arts and Humanities core, and we've done additional revisions to the descriptions and bullets, which are highlighted here for you to see. I just want to read the first point. Creativity and Imagine courses challenge students to engage with the arts, think creatively, and learn through doing. Individually or collaboratively, students will participate in artistry or creation and experiment with pathways and means of creative expression while engaging with their own and others' curiosity. You can also see the bullet points below, which I do want to make note are broader than the bullet points that accompany current LE courses. In some feedback that we've gotten, we've heard from a lot of people that the bullets, that the criteria that faculty must currently meet in LE courses are quite specific. And you'll note that these are broader and more inclusive. Next slide, please. The Humanistic Thinking Foundation was formerly the Search for Meaning Foundation. And we have changed the name. We have included a more explicit connection to literature and incorporated additional language from the humanities section of the current Arts and Humanities core. Humanistic thinking courses engage the way in which humans search for meaning while interpreting their lived experiences in cultural and artistic works that they produce. These courses require the cultivation of appropriate methods or frameworks for assessing the ways in which humans make sense of their world. They ask students to read, analyze, and reflect on literature and other human creations. And then it goes on to give examples. And then these are the revised bullet points as well, which you can see are broader than the current bullet points that accompany LE courses. We could go to the next slide. The revisions to the multidisciplinary synthesis course are listed here, and the format has not changed. We just want to clarify that sections of the multidisciplinary synthesis course will be taught by regular, tenured and tenured track faculty, contract faculty, or academic professional staff who hold primary responsibility for teaching. And that is the same criteria that the foundation and focus area courses have as well. And then based on some concerns about clarification for academic freedom, we have aligned the language on syllabus control by instructors of multi-section courses to align with the 2022 Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee statement. Next slide, please. You're not voting on implementation, but this is the implementation plan, and I think it's important. If this is passed this spring, there would be an implementation task force, which would include many faculty committees, many more than the current Council on Liberal Education has for certification. Students would be surveyed in the fall to the following fall to estimate demand for the focus areas. We would solicit course proposals and work with faculty committees to expedite approvals. Faculty committees would also approve equivalent AP and IB courses and the transfer curriculum, and admissions would begin promoting the curriculum to potential students. In fall of 2027, this would be implemented for incoming new students coming from high school, and then it would be implemented in fall 2029 for entering transfer students. And I will say a lot of work behind the scenes is going on to ensure that no transfer students are delayed in their graduation and that the appropriate transfer curriculum indeed transfers. As Vice Provost Singh emailed department chairs and directors of undergraduate studies this fall, if this is not passed, liberal education courses and writing intensive courses that have not been certified within the last 5 years would need to be recertified. If we could turn to the next slide. And here is where I introduce Corinne Zuers, the Assistant Budget Director.
Thank you, Catherine. Again, I'm Corinne Zuers. I'm the Assistant Budget Director for the university. Thank you for providing me with a few minutes of your time today to speak about the financial considerations associated with a new curriculum and when finances will be brought into the conversation. From a high-level perspective, one of the key principles of the university's budget model is that the revenue and expense allocation model should not drive mission-related decisions like curriculum. Mission should come first and budget discussions should follow. Then, it's our job as the budget office to work with university leadership to help implement any changes within the budget. The budget office will not create estimates by college in advance. That is because there are so many unknowns, unknown variables that depend on dimensions like student choice, collegiate level responses to new curricula, such as innovating course offerings to fit, as well as college level decisions that are made independently of a new curriculum. Then each year, the budget office works with deans, the college's chief financial managers, and others to monitor shifts in revenue and expenses, and then to discuss how to address any shortfalls. The budget office relies on the deans and the chief financial managers each year to help us understand all of the college's budgets. And we will rely on them to get an understanding of an impact of a new curriculum. Any permanent changes will be discussed and addressed through the budget process. Change slides. Thank you. So that you can see how these discussions on curricula changes will fit into the process, I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to walk through our budget development timeline. And many of you may have seen this timeline before. This is a part of our standard discussions on the budget. We begin each year of the budget development process on the far left in July, when we talk through the major budget variables with the president and other university leaders. On the revenue side, this includes variables like tuition increases, reallocations or expense reduction targets, and potential requests to the state of Minnesota for additional funding. On the cost side, we talk through potential changes in compensation, new costs for facilities, utilities, potential investments in units, and other expense changes. After July, we moved into the support unit process. When we meet with all of our support units, these are units like the Office of Human Resources, Office of Information Technology, General Counsel's office, and so on. And finally, in the spring, that's when we meet with all of the colleges and greater Minnesota campuses within the academic unit process. This includes meeting with all of the deans and chief financial managers to get a full understanding of each of their budgets. We talk through projected revenues, projected expenses, and strategic priorities, and any new curriculum changes would be a part of these conversations. We would rely on the colleges, the deans, and the chief financial managers to help us understand the impact of the curriculum changes at that time. We would look forward, but we would also look backward at any changes because it's important. Sometimes when we're doing projections, we don't know all of the variables going in, so that's why it's really important that we do both. We look forwards and backwards. And our work in the budget office is never in isolation. The conversations with the deans and the chief financial managers are a very, very important part of our process. These conversations around curricula changes would be one variable as a part of our broader conversations with the deans and the chief financial managers. And our goal through the budget process, through this whole timeline, is to try to make every college and every greater Minnesota campus as successful as possible through the process. The only other thing that I wanted to mention today is as we're thinking about potential curriculum changes, and that would be with the changes that are proposed today or any changes in the future, we would not think about them as changes in enrollment. We would not project an increase or decrease in enrollment due to a curriculum change. And so this investment that the provost office has committed to would be in addition to what we have in place today. It would be $500,000 in recurring funds as well as $5 million in non-recurring funds to help with the transition. And this is, like I said, above and beyond what is available. So, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Corinne. If we just have one more slide left, thank you. Student voices in forums and in our meetings have shaped this proposal from the very beginning. We have heard from students individually, from student groups, and in forums throughout this process and have been responsive throughout. But now that the proposal is finalized, we are hearing from individual students and student groups that they are very much on board with this plan. Our undergraduates want this plan to pass. So there's a quote here from the letter of support from the undergraduate student government dated February 27th that you can read. We also have two individual quotes from individual students who have reviewed this plan and are very enthusiastic. And I want to read a longer quote from the College of Liberal Arts Student Board that just sent us a letter in strong support today that will be included in your April material. Quote, "The CLA Student Board is pleased to express our support for the proposed revisions to the core curriculum. This proposal reflects a meaningful investment in student learning, adaptability, and preparation for future careers in an ever-changing professional environment. We particularly appreciate the addition of the multidisciplinary synthesis course, which provides students with a tangible product to showcase as they prepare to enter the workforce. This ensures that their general education experience translates into practical and demonstrable skills. We value the increased customization this proposal offers. Rather than a checklist model of requirements, students can shape their general education experience in ways that align with their interests and their career aspirations, making their learning more meaningful and impactful. We believe these changes will enhance the undergraduate experience and better equip students for success beyond their time at the University of Minnesota." End quote. I will also add that in conversations with students, they not only talked about how this plan would be much more meaningful, but also that this new approach should be used front and center when with admissions in recruiting prospective students. And many expressed that they wish that they could sign on immediately. As I said in my introduction, the committee worked to respond to the Boyer 2030 Commission report to provide undergraduate students with a transformative education for life, work, and citizenship. The core curriculum proposal is an exciting opportunity for the University of Minnesota. On behalf of the committee, we want to thank you for your engagement, and we look forward to your comments and questions.
So we will now proceed to debate. Because we know there are a variety of opinions on this proposal, we're going to use the pro and con debate format, even though there is no motion on the floor. Therefore, if you have a question or comment, please come to the appropriate mic in the front of the room. Again, pro and con. If you are participating online, please raise your hand, and Amber will alert the speaker that there is a question from a remote participant. Please note that remote participants may not go in the pro-con order, as Amber will not be monitoring that. When you are called, please introduce yourself and indicate which unit you represent. As a reminder, non-senators must be yielded time by a senator in order to speak. Non-senators wishing to speak may either ask a senator in advance or get in the queue and ask a senator to yield time once recognized. I will delegate calling on people and the answers to the questions to Professor Pearson and Durfee. Thank you both so much, by the way, for that really informative presentation, as well as for the hours of work that you're spending on this. Thank you. So do we want to?
Thank you. I'm Alicia Cohen, and I'm a senator from the College of Liberal Arts and the Hubbard School of Journalism. First, I don't have a comment on the specific proposal that's con. I actually admire the consultation, the work with the students, et cetera. My concern is actually in the principle being advanced and advancing this in this time, which is that in theory, it would be nice for the revenue and expense allocation model to not drive mission-related decisions like curriculum. But the reality is it does. It's prevented our school from innovating. It's prevented us from advancing things. And I'm concerned, and I'm glad that we've had more time to think about things, because this last week, the CLA chairs and met with our brand new dean to talk about the 7% cut we're now modeling in the College of Liberal Arts. It's deep. It's the size of the journalism school. And the joke is we should just move the journalism school out of the CLA. But in all seriousness, asking our dean to figure out how to handle sizable cuts of this magnitude. I'm also on a workforce committee where we're thinking about the workforce and our P&A and our contract people. How we think about moving people to this new curriculum is something that needs a lot of care and attention. And then we're thinking about changing participation. While everyone can participate, there is a little less science here. And we know that NIH and federal grants, all the research enterprise will be impacted. So how will that work if, could the mix of people's interest in participating in liberal education change as tuition becomes more valuable in the next year? Yes. So I would just encourage us to kind of think really carefully a little bit more about implementation, about workforce issues, if it's part of it. I really don't want this to fail again after everything that's been talked to. I don't have a con in that way, but I think timing and implementation is important. And I love that there's some investment on the table for smoothing this out, but I'll say that we have other priorities as an organization as well. And we might be asking our leaders to do a lot of different things at once if we are trying to implement this quickly this year. So that's where I am.
Before you get to the next question, as the chair and Dr. Cohen, thank you for the comment. And I want to just note that the CLA is not unique or being singled out there. Every school and unit is being asked to model, to do scenario planning around budget cuts, and that's because of the very real both state and federal pressures which exist. And that was before the federal uncertainty was introduced. That being said, we have to continue to plan for the future. It is too premature to know whether, what the impacts will be on any one particular school around research funding. And also that, like in COVID, it'll be, however we manage it, we're going to have to manage it as a university and not as an individual units alone in terms of the current budget uncertainty that we have. In the same way that each school during COVID did not develop their own COVID rules. It was managed collectively. And it is a new time for us for budgets, and we'll have to think about that.
But I just want to say that we will manage through whatever that budget uncertainty is, and I encourage people to continue to plan for a future in all areas of strategy. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure we are not singling out CLA. This is university and campus wide that we are doing this modeling, and we must. Thank you.
All right, hi. I'm Emily Snellrud, faculty senator from College of Biological Sciences, and I'm generally enthusiastic for this proposal for many of the reasons that have already been highlighted. I wanted to add that I think it's particularly timely given the sort of external pressures on showing the utility of higher education and questioning the utility of research and science in general. I think having a curriculum that is so closely aligned with sort of the grand challenges that society faces and career usefulness for students is helpful in demonstrating why we are here and why we're great. So I also wanted to share that I talked with my students in my class, and they are generally enthusiastic as well. They like the added agency to choose courses, especially within the foundations area. There were some concerns that the focus areas might almost seem kind of like a minor, and they already have a major. Sometimes they already have a minor. They're going to have to do more to fulfill these three extra classes. And so I think in terms of the implementation phase, thinking about how do classes potentially count for multiple things, but also making sure having enough there to approve classes so that, maybe they're already taking these classes in their major and they count towards wellness or environment as well, so that they don't feel like there's this extra burden of classes that they have to take. But it seemed like that could be worked out in the implementation phase. So thank you.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Nathaniel Mills, English Department CLA Senator. I'm, obviously at the mic for the con, but I want to speak to two matters about the justifications for this redesign that we've heard that I personally still find somewhat unconvincing. The first is that, well, the current curriculum goes back to 1991 and is 30 some odd years old. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's outdated, or at least that case hasn't been made. For example, the literature LE that we currently have is taught by multiple departments in the College of Liberal Arts. That being said, I was 8 years old in 1991, and I'm teaching LE courses now, and I'm not teaching whoever was teaching it in 1991 was teaching, right? We're all updating our syllabi. We're all interdisciplinary scholars in various fields, and we're reflecting that in our teaching. We've added new LE courses along the way incrementally. We've even added a whole new LE requirement a few years ago. And so I see the need for an ever-evolving CC. I don't see the need for a radical overhaul of it. The second point I would make is about the level of student support. I mean, I would like to see some sort of metrics or quantitative data that illustrate that there is a wide majority or even a sizable minority of undergraduate support for this. We've heard a lot of anecdotal evidence. We've heard a lot of arguments from former student representatives on the committee. And so I think something of this kind of drastic nature, which has already been divisive and has been for 2-3 years now, rather than risk going ahead with something that has a lot of unanswered budgetary questions about it, how it will affect individual units in my college, I would want to see stronger, firmer data that this is something that is widely backed by the undergraduates. Thanks.
Hello, I'm not a senator. I believe I need to ask permission to speak. Will you? Thank you. Much appreciation. My name is Vlad Grishkevicius. I'm a faculty member at the Carlson School. And so it was mentioned that this curriculum is not the newest curriculum. I don't think the age is the challenge. The challenge for me is I've seen how students and our own advisors respond to our core curriculum, as they often treat it as a box checking exercise. It's just another gamut to run through in your college experience rather than coming to college to have choice and put things together and to be thinking in different ways. And what I appreciate about this committee, and I especially appreciate it because I've been on curriculum committees before, and it is daunting because you're trying to make all faculty happy. Now, you've been on committees before. To try to make all faculty happy is a non-starter. It's never going to happen. Perfection is not realistic. And what I appreciate is how much consultation has happened, and not just consultation where people are pretending to listen, but actual listening. And then I saw 3 different versions of this curriculum that were substantially different from each other because of the listening that occurred for all constituents, all colleges, students, faculty, and staff. And so to me, I think the curriculum has been created where it's unique to us. It's something that our students are excited about, our prospective students could be excited about to come to the University of Minnesota. And I appreciate it because I think students do appreciate the choice.
30
Students
seconds.
love the choice. And they'll be able to not just have that choice, but then put it all together at the end to have that signature experience that I think we as a university haven't had. So I'm excited about it, and the students that I've spoken to are also excited about it.
Hi, my name is Emily Beck, and I am a faculty senator from the libraries, where I'm the associate curator of the Wangenstein Historical Library. I was really glad to see that there is some financial support being offered from the provost's office. I hope that that continues with the new hire. And I am concerned, or I have a request, that that funding also be available to people in the libraries. The vast majority of the work that I do is curricular support for courses that fit LEs, and tons of my colleagues, that's basically all the work that they do is in support of courses like Writing 1301 and other courses that fit these requirements. There's going to be a ton of work for the faculty who have to make these changes or get to make these changes. We also have a ton of work that we're going to have to do. So I really, really hope that that support is also being offered to the other folks who are involved in this process.
Hi, I'm Emily Pelton. I'm from CSE Faculty Senator. I wanted to express my support for this curriculum. I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and I really think it's important to recognize and lift up that you are centering student voices in this, right? It's about the students who are going to have this curriculum. It's not about me. It's not about the people that are going to kind of be here 50 years from now. It's about the students that are going to be here 4 years from now, 8 years from now, and then where they're going to be in 30 years. And I think this curriculum does a really good job, especially with that synthesis course, of providing students an opportunity to put together everything that they've been doing from a lot of different perspectives. So like, I don't know, political science class, history class, chemistry class, all focusing on the environment, putting together something tangible at the end and being able to show the world, here's what I did with my education, instead of like that checkbox model. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
I'm just going to break in because we have a question from online from VV Ganeshanathan.
Hi, thank you so much. Okay, this seems like it's working. I'm a CLA faculty senator from English, and I just wanted to respond to this box checking thing. It seems to me like anytime you go to get a degree, you have to check boxes. That's what happens. Progress to degree is charted in a certain way, and you have to check stuff off. This will just be a different set of boxes. I think that it feels a little bit to me like rearranging the furniture. So I just wanted to note that, and also that I have hesitations about, others have expressed this as well, the labor that would be required to get this done, and also the ways in which this might impact the way in which undergraduates interact with associate faculty, how many associate faculty members would be involved in implementing this. So I don't know, I guess it seems to me like the notion of box checking is just sort of, unless you're going to have sort of no requirements at all, there are going to be boxes and people are going to check them. And I would love to kind of have us deeply consider kind of the ethics and impact, kind of in the long term. This is already something that's impacting higher education generally, reliance on associate faculty, contingent faculty, and what it means for our students to learn from people who are, in my opinion, not always supported, not just here, but also elsewhere in the way that
30 seconds.
that should be. And I'll stop there. Thanks.
I'm Andrea Stirk from CLA History Department, and I'm speaking as someone who teaches courses with multiple LEs and many cross-listed courses across departments and programs. And I'd like to respond to just two of the claims or arguments that have been made against the current LE system and for the new core curriculum proposal. First, the argument's been made that the current LE system has been, as several people have said, just box checking for students, and that the new core curriculum focus areas give students more agency in choosing courses. Well, my response is, as we've heard from others, graduating from college, completing a major, or any curricular requirements, including the new proposed core curriculum, will involve checking boxes. But also, students already have an overwhelming amount of choice in the current LE curriculum, with over 1,200 courses. Current LE themes offer hundreds of choices. Also, the choice of focus area is happening in this new proposal too early in their undergraduate career in year one, and it ends up actually narrowing their horizons and their future exposure to new material. A second claim has to do with the alleged insufficient interdisciplinarity of the current LE system. It's been argued that the integrative model of the new core curriculum proposal is more interdisciplinary than the distributive model
30 seconds.
of the current LE system. First of all, LE courses are incredibly interdisciplinary right now. Many cover broad topics, many already double dip with a foundation and a socially focused theme. Secondly, in the new core proposal, many students will most often choose a focus area that aligns with a proposed major, thus making them much less interdisciplinary and less intellectually broad. For example, pre-med students might choose well-being as their focus area, political science might choose civic life, and so on.
Thank you, Patrick Nachman. I'm in the School of Medicine. I'm a kidney doctor. When Professor Pearson described this to my colleagues and I in medicine, there were three of us, one in emergency medicine, one in oncology, and myself. And I think it's fair to say that we got very excited about it. It became very, very clear to us that this was, first of all, an amazing amount of work, and thank you for doing that, but also an opportunity for students and for faculty, both in the undergrad and maybe graduate schools, to be very creative about developing programs that are out of the box and give the students an opportunity to be creative and the faculty an opportunity to be creative. I hear the issues of how do we do it and how much is it going to cost and is this the right time? I'm old and I think that there's never a good time. And I think I really like the idea that we're really thinking years ahead. We'll figure out how to do it and how to implement it and how to find the money for it, but we need to commit to innovation and creativity. And this is why I'm in support of your work. Thank you very much.
Hi, Michael Galobe, CLA, and I also really support your work. I want to thank both of you for all the consultations you've done. I also think a lot of the ideals in here, you know, my heart is with you on a lot of that. The chair brain of me is not with this proposal. I plan to vote no, but it's not because I disagree with some of the principles here. It's because I think large-scale reform of LE is kind of an inherent problem. I think going back to Nate's point, the courses, as you know from being on CLE, are constantly turning over. Innovation is happening all the time. There's a lot of interdisciplinarity, and I think there are some structural flaws to this curriculum, and I think a key one is this synthesis seminar. I'm also vice chair of the CLA Assembly. There were many critical remarks about the curriculum made in the past two meetings we've had about it. But one of the key issues is that I don't feel like faculty really want to teach that synthesis seminar. I think it's a really, really big lift because it's going to be required, and it's going to be required of students in their third year or fourth year at some point after they've already taken 3 focus area courses. And I think that is creating a group project with a bunch of students sounds really great in theory, but having taught at this university for 11 years, it's actually incredibly challenging. And I think it's going to end up being taught by adjuncts. in a way that's not particularly close to the ideals that we have. So my recommendation, for me, I'm going to vote no on your proposal, not because I disagree with some of the ideals, but I would prefer
30
to work
seconds.
incrementally with some of the best components of this with the new provost, incrementally phasing in, say, a new civic life and ethics course or a global perspectives requirement, and to not upend all of our faculty and staff labor with a massive curriculum that there's just so much, I think there's just too many structural issues with it. So thanks.
Hello, my name is Shanna Waters, and I'm a faculty senator in CSE. Last time I had asked a question about how would we institute the writing portion, because there was a change. You all heard that there wasn't a change. There was. I got follow-up, and I really appreciate the follow-up from the person who did clarify that I was correct, that there was a change to the writing. And to many of you, this may not be a big deal, but from computer science, the computer science department that I'm in, our W classes have sometimes 170, 200 students in them. And even though our sections could have 35, 40 students, the idea is somehow that we have the capacity to be able to institute a W at the required, every major must provide a W, when we do not have our TAs, our graduate TAs, teaching the writing. It's typically the professor. So right there, we're out of the scope of being able to do this. So I very much valued your comments on budget, but budget matters. Budget matters to us because for us to do it right, and I am a rule follower. You tell me to do something, I do it. But I don't like it when people say you should vote on this because it doesn't have anything to do with that. Yes,
30 seconds.
it does. If we do not understand how the ramifications are of the budgets, then we are not doing strategic planning. We're flying by the seat of our pants. And quite frankly, I don't agree with that. So what I would say to you is, if the W portion of the way in which the core proposal is being presented, we cannot support it because we cannot support it. We cannot pay people
Time is
with
up.
just nothing.
Is there any more questions online? Seeing,
Mine's more a question. So one of the points that I keep hearing Jessica, Chicano Latino Studies, is that the synthesis course is something that the students will be very proud of to share. My students really hate group projects a lot of times, and I try to make it very entertaining and do the best that I can because we have to work in a collaborative world. I really appreciate that in terms of the value. But for me, the students are most proud of their capstones, and I'm not clear on what all the colleges do for some type of senior project or culmination project. But for me, coming from a very small department, we already have limited capacity in terms of being able to roll out a lot of these LEs, et cetera. So we really try to focus on that capstone as something that the students can be proud of, that they use for med school, law school, PhD programs. And so I don't see us being able to have capacity to participate in the synthesis program. And I've talked to a lot of other ethnic studies departments and they can't. And I know you say it's okay, but then that means that the voices of us as ethnic studies scholars will not be represented when I would argue that we are leaders in interdisciplinarity. And to me, this is a very big problem when we're thinking about how different types of intellectual trajectories are represented in these courses. And so I guess part statement, part question in terms of, aren't there other things that the students are proud of, such as a capstone, but I don't know what other colleges do. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a really important point about the capstone, and I wish that every department had the experience that your department students had in a capstone. There are many capstones, and as I mentioned earlier, this is a distinct project, a distinct course with students in the same focus area from across the university. And so I hear you. I've heard from many faculty. We've heard from many faculty that a lot of colleges, departments, they wouldn't have faculty who are interested in teaching the synthesis, and you would not be asked to provide faculty. But I also hear you, but what does that mean for the voices of those faculty? And I guess what I would say is your students, the students who are in your department, the students who are not in your department who take your classes, they will be in conversation with students from across the university, sharing those perspectives in a broader way than they would have before this curriculum. But, you make a very valuable point, and I appreciate that.
Hi, I am not a senator. I would need yield time to me if that's anyone. Thank you. Hi, my name is Sarah Davis. I'm the student representative on the core curriculum committee, and I wanted to also address part of your question since I am a student, and we've heard a couple different things. I was also one of the writers of the undergraduate student government letter. I'm a former student body president here at the University of Minnesota. And I wanted to say that something that we hear very frequently from students about the desire for the synthesis course is the fact that they can pick something that supports their career trajectory, that shows they can do interdisciplinary education. There's almost a dead split among all of the student groups I've talked to, among all of my friends that I've talked to, about people who want a core curriculum or a liberal education that will support, that will let them dive deeper into their major interests, and people who want to do something completely different and say, I want actually a more liberal arts type of education or more of humanities. I hear a lot of that from science students as well. And so I wanted to speak to the fact that there's a lot of students who say, I want something that is a project that can help me prove that I can do interdisciplinary education if maybe my major doesn't support, maybe doesn't necessarily indicate that with my capstone that I'm planning on doing. I think I also know for myself the idea that I could do something that preps me for that is really, really great. And I wanted to just address a little bit of your question that
30 seconds.
Look forward to that idea, as much as they may hate group projects, if you can do it and you can plan out a course where you can take this with somebody that and you can do it together, you have an idea to change the university. I think it's an opportunity to do that, and that's what I hear. I can't answer the other part of your question, which I think is very understandable, but I wanted to address that. Thank you.
And I just want to thank you. It takes a lot for students to come and speak in front of the body, and I just really appreciate it. Wow.
I have a question from online from Ophelia Farran.
Thank you, Ophelia Ferran, faculty senator from CLA. I appreciate the work that the committee has put into this, and I've been to several meetings. And the fact that you have taken feedback into consideration seriously is very much appreciated. I do share concerns with some previous speakers about whether the changes to the current system really merit the amount of work that is going to happen, and whether there is a slightly optimistic perspective that's being presented of what this is going to do that maybe will not end up being lived up to in reality. One thing that I'm concerned about is the definition of focus areas. There's a lot of emphasis on how this is going to be interdisciplinary. And of course, that's a wonderful thing, and students love it and faculty members love it. But when I read the definition of the focus areas, which is the area where they're supposed to be an enforcing or somehow a guaranteeing that these 3 courses that students are going to take are interdisciplinary, the sentence that I find is that the intention is that the 3 courses have different approaches to the focus area, which could be enforced by having each be from a different course designator. So it's an intention and it could be enforced. And what I don't understand is if it's so important that these courses be interdisciplinary, and that's what we want, that's what the students want, why is the wording so wishy-washy? Because anybody could take the 3 courses from the same department and still be fulfilling the requirement for this focus area and not really be getting that interdisciplinary perspective.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. Let me just comment on that because it indeed is something that within the committee, there was a considerable amount of discussion and the way we left it in the report is to state the intent, right? The intent is that these three focus areas are from different lenses and that they get put together in the multidisciplinary. How that intent is put into practice, we thought is best for the implementation task force, but even maybe to let it run for a while and then see if it is a problem, to do an assessment of whether people are indeed choosing three of the same thing, or in fact, if it's not a problem. And so that's, again, one of the reasons why the report recommends, certainly at the 5-year point, to really do a deep dive and examine questions just like that. But thank you for that comment. Really appreciate it.
I just want to, as a point of order, note that we're 20 minutes behind. We have another, technically, we have another 10 minutes. 15 minutes more scheduled for this item. We could choose to take the 2 questions on the floor and then move on to the next order of business. But that is a question that would need to be answered collectively. So I guess I would ask if anybody objects to taking these last 2 questions and then moving on to the next point of order. And if so, I suppose we would take a vote on that. Not seeing any objections, we'll take these last 2 points on order and move to be back on time. Thank you.
I'm not a senator, so I'd like to ask someone to yield time. Thank you. My name is Christine Baumler. I'm the chair of the art department, and I'm also on the committee for the LE revisions. I joined the committee in the summer of 2024 because I also had excitement and concerns about the proposal. And I have to say that being on the committee and seeing the really intense listening and quality of work and listening to students and other faculty has really made me even more enthusiastic about supporting this proposal. I want to make 2 quick points. One is that one of the LE categories, the foundation categories in this proposal, is creativity and imagination. And I think that this curriculum opens up a lot of possibility and excitement for creativity and imagination, not just in the arts, but thinking about it in other disciplines as well. But I will say that my colleagues in the arts, music, theater, dance, and the design department are very excited about this opportunity to be considered as part of the curriculum. And then the second point I'd like to make is that I taught Grand Challenges since 2016 collaboratively with Rebecca Montgomery. It was an art and climate change course. And my students did collaborative projects, which I think they actually loved. They were publicly facing. And I was really excited about the projects that I saw come out of the other Grand Challenges courses in the classroom to community presentations that happened
30
this
seconds.
semester. And so I just want to say that in terms of the synthesis course and students getting a chance to create publicly facing projects, I'm extremely enthusiastic about that and happy to talk to anyone about that process.
Hi, Bruce Braun, former chair and current director of undergraduate studies in geography, environment, society, and College of Liberal Arts. First of all, thanks so much. You guys have done a lot of work, and I really appreciate the work that's been done and the listening and incorporating some of the feedback that you've got. Nevertheless, I'm standing at the con, and in its current form, I still don't think I can support this. And there are a couple of things that I'm concerned about. The first is the choice of one focus area. That feels like a minor to me. So my understanding is that we have majors and minors, and that's where we do our in-depth, going into a subject area and so on, right? And then that the core curriculum is meant to provide a certain breadth of things that we feel students should really be engaging with. So why focus in on one focus area and turn that into what is essentially another minor, which can, and I'll just say self-interestedly, we want all the people in the environment one to do it all in our department. Okay, there's no doubt about that. We'll be trying for that. But my chief concern is with the multidisciplinary synthesis course, and there's a labor component to it. And I think there's student satisfaction component to it. So the labor component, it's hard to see this not contributing to more adjunct teaching on campus. I do not know many faculty who are waving their hands up in the air and saying, I want to teach this class. Okay. And I
30
think that's a
seconds.
concern. I don't think we should be working towards more adjuncting in this plan. The second is student satisfaction. I don't know terribly many students that are really keen on group work, but I'm going to say something else instead. I was just reading graduate applications. People in those graduate applications were not saying, in my group work, I did this and this and this. They were saying, in my individual capstone or in this project, in a directed research project I did with a faculty member or whatever the case might be.
Time is
That's
up.
what they're promoting. And so I think we really want to think about that.
I just want to thank you both again, as well as all the pro and con discussion. I think, so thank you so much. Yeah. There's many difficult topics that come in front of this body, and I think many more that will as we look to govern the university together over the next many years. And I again just am impressed and enthused as a society that we can still stand up and have respectful civil debate back and forth and discourse and hear each other. So I just think we should be proud of every little bit of that we get in our current society. And of course that we are honoring that tradition here. Item number 6 concerns revisions to administrative policy, openness and research. If there's any discussion, we should do a hand raise or a virtual hand raise. Not seeing any. Can somebody check online? Oh, there is a hand raise. Yeah. So somebody would like a discussion? Yep. So with that, should we have people come to the mic? So if you have a question, you can come down to the mic, and if so, Pat Briscoe is present on Zoom to answer any questions.
Hi, Mike Dockery, Senator and CFANS. Question about indigenous communities. One, language. There's inconsistent language in the documents that I was looking at. So hopefully someone can go in and explain exactly what language should be used in all places. So there were frequently asked questions that talked about indigenous communities versus sovereign tribal governments. Those were 2 phrases. There's another 1 or 2 in there as well. And then secondly, how is that actually going to be how is that going to work when we have indigenous sovereign governments in the United States that may want to protect their data? How do we actually engage with that? I know it's there, and I think it's really good that it's in there, but my question is, how is that going to be implemented?
John, online, we see you. Can you answer those questions for us? Thank you for the question.
I can't offer to go in and correct the inconsistencies and standardize the terminology. I think that's easy enough. To talk about how we actually implement the protections, I think it's going to depend on specific projects. Unfortunately, I'm also not the best person to address this particular question, unfortunately. I'm the export controls guy, so this question has come up from somebody else, so I apologize for passing the buck. If you have questions that you want to talk about offline, I'm happy to address those. So off to a terrible start, sorry.
Well, any more questions? Right, but how do we, I might suggest that perhaps somebody from your office could connect with the gentleman who had the question after to answer those specific questions. In the meantime, without any other discussion, we'll proceed to the poll.
The poll has been opened. Few more seconds to vote. All right, the motion passes with 55 votes affirming and 8 votes against.
Thank you. Item 7 concerns old business. There is no old business for the Faculty Senate. Item 8 concerns new business for the Faculty Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. And that is present in person or online, I just say. Is there any new business? Seeing none online, seeing none in the room. If there's no further business to come before the Senate, the meeting will adjourn. There being no further business, the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all so much. Have safe travels.